The gavel struck the warped oak bench with a crack that seemed to silence even the restless prairie wind seeping through the gaps in the courthouse walls. Clara May Whitlock stood alone before the judge's bench, a slip of a woman dwarfed by the shadows of men who had gathered to watch her fall. Her hands, hidden in the folds of her faded calico dress, trembled so slightly that only she could feel it. She could not afford to let them see her shake. Judge Harlan peered at her over gold-rimmed spectacles smudged with fingerprints. The folds of skin under his eyes sagged like a hound's, but there was no softness in his stare. Only fatigue, and the cold certainty that the law, his law, would not bend for a girl without a man to speak for her. "Miss Whitlock," he rasped, voice dry as the dust drifting through the high windows, "you stand accused of forging a deed to the Boone Ranch, and of stealing 2 cattle marked with Silas Boone's brand. What say you before this court decides your fate?" Clara's lips parted, but her throat had turned to stone. Words lived behind her teeth, but refused to come. She knew Boone was watching her, leaning forward in his polished boots, one hand resting on the cane he never really needed. His smile was small and private, meant only for her, a promise of what would come when the judge's hammer fell. She could still feel the ache in her ribs from where Boone's boot had pressed her. Down in the barnyard mud, 2 nights passed. She had scrubbed her skin raw, but no soap could wash out the memory of his laughter. "I am no thief," she managed, though the words sounded pitiful even to her own ears. A whisper fluttered through the room, men shifting in their seats. The scrape of boots, the stifled gasp of a woman fanning herself in the summer heat. Nobody here believed her innocence would matter. Harlan lifted the deed Boone's lawyer had brought in, pinching it like it was some dead snake. "You deny this is your handwriting?" "I do." Clara's voice cracked. She hated that it cracked. Boone's lawyer, a slick, narrow-eyed man named Merrick, stepped forward. He spoke to the judge but kept his gaze locked on Clara like he was savoring the sight of her unraveling. "Your Honor, this young woman came to Boone Ranch under false promise of work. She wormed her way into the old foreman's papers. She knew what she was doing. This is not the first time she's—" Clara flinched as the heavy doors at the back of the courtroom slammed open so hard they struck the walls and rattled the glass panes. Light, fierce and blinding after the dim hush inside, cut across the floorboards. It caught the dust in the air like drifting gold. A figure filled the doorway, tall, broad at the shoulders beneath a sun-bleached duster that moved like river water. When he stepped forward, he wore no badge, but he didn't need one. A battered hat shaded most of his face, but even from behind, the watchers knew his name before he spoke. Wyatt Cade, gun hand, outlaw, ghost to some, nightmare to the rest. He walked slow and easy, each bootstep measured, but loud in the hush. His revolver rode low on his hip, not hidden, not flaunted. The spurs at his heels clinked like silver coins. Dropped into a grave. He did not look at Boone. He did not look at the lawyer or the judge. He looked only at Clara, eyes dark under the brim, fixed on her as if the rest of the room had fallen away. Clara's breath caught in her chest. The taste of memory rose behind her tongue. A riverbank at dusk, a promise whispered in the hush. Between thunder and dawn, gone now, like smoke, like lies. Wyatt did not stop at the rail. He stepped right through, ignoring the bailiff's startled reach for a weapon he'd never draw fast enough. Wyatt's boots scuffed the floor beside Clara, the smell of dust and saddle oil filling her senses. She wanted to recoil. She could not move. Judge Harlan squinted up at him. "Who the hell do you think you are, storming in like you own my court?" Wyatt tipped his hat back slow, revealing eyes that had seen things Clara never would. His voice was softer than his reputation, rough like gravel under boot heels. "Name's Cade, Wyatt Cade." He turned, not to the judge but to Boone, letting the name sink in. Boone's smirk faltered like a candle in a draft. Wyatt looked back at Clara. Something flickered there, apology, or pity, or a promise she no longer wanted. He faced the judge, shoulders squared. "She's my wife." The words slammed into her like the doors had. A hush followed, then a collective gasp that seemed to lift the whole room an inch off its floorboards. The bailiff's hand dropped. From his belt, Merrick's mouth worked, but no sound came out. Boone's cane struck the plank floor, the rubber tip squealing like a stuck hog. Judge Harlan blinked behind his smudged spectacles. "Your wife?" Wyatt nodded once, slow and certain. "By right and by word." 5 years passed, under the stars by Dead Man's Creek. Preacher's ledger has my mark and hers. Clara found. Her voice too late to stop him. She should have shouted liar. She should have said don't you dare. But she knew he'd say it anyway, and the truth would break her faster than his lie. Boone snarled, stepping forward. "That piece of paper's worth less than the dirt under my boots. She's lying same as him." Wyatt's eyes slid to Boone, flat and cold. "Call me a liar again, Silas. I'll call you out proper courtroom. Or street makes no difference." The judge pounded his gavel once, but it did little good. The room had shifted. The tide had turned, and Clara May Whitlock, who had come here alone to drown, felt the air shift under her ribs for the first time in years. Beside her, Wyatt didn't touch her, but she felt the gravity of him. A lie or not, he had placed himself between her and Boone's wolves. For now that was enough. Judge Harlan cleared his throat, finding his voice again. "If this man is your husband, Miss Whitlock, say so now. Speak the truth, or hang by silence." Clara looked at Wyatt's profile scar near his ear, shadow of stubble catching the slant of light. She thought of the nights she'd prayed for someone to stand for her, even if it came too late. She lifted her chin, felt her voice settle into something steady. "Yes, Your Honor, he's my husband." Outside, thunder rolled across the flatlands, as if the sky itself had been waiting for her to speak. Inside, the air changed tense, alive and heavy with the certainty that everything was about to break. Ask ChatGPT.